Many claim they like riding, but I know that they ain't. Ride or die. I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint. Ride or die. Many claim they like riding, but I know that they ain't. They see the red and they call me a devil, but mind the treble, let me level with you. I used to idolize rappers that paint they face, but now I rock the blood of Christ ever since I've been saved by grace.
All right, guys, welcome to today's debate between the Apostate Prophet and the Finding Truth. All right, guys, sorry about the background noise. Tonight's debate title is going to be, is Islam true or false? Finding Truth, we'll go ahead and just jump right into your opening 10-minute statement.
Okay, are we going to do some intros before the 10-minute statements?
Nope, we can go straight into it. We'll plug channels and all that right after, my friend.
All right. So, Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon you all. And I'm glad to be here with you today. And let's start by why Islam is truth from my perspective. Let's start from the fundamentals. So, the reason I see why Islam is true is that because, number one, it's a rational religion. So, somebody who is rational and who would like to use his mind is actually encouraged by Islam to think. And this is something that you would typically find in a religion that, or in a concept that is true, things that are typically asking people not to think about them are hiding something. Now you would expect that in a religion or in a construct that is true. Number two, it is consistent with the major previous religions that preach the existence of God, basic morality, and I can argue that it is actually prophesied by other religions, like at least Abrahamic religions and maybe even Hinduism. Obviously, it does insist and preach that God exists and that He is one, which is, I think, again, something that is a rational and logical conclusion of somebody who has who can actually use reason to reach this result. And then, if God exists and He's created the human being, and the human being is this creature that has free will, who can do good or bad, then you would expect God to want to guide him. And you would expect that with the continued development of the human being and the human condition, that God will send down a religion that will be consistent with the development of the human intellect, and that will guide humanity to a moral and an intellectual standard that can survive and that is protected by God to lead humanity until the end of time. And I think Islam fulfills those criteria. I also like about Islam that there is no divinity for any person. So every person is fallible. Only God is divine, and His prophets are guided by Him. So even when they even do things that are less preferred than other things, he would guide them to the extent that at the end of the day, their lives can be used as role models. I think that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is a great role model, and that his life being preserved in this way is also evidence for a religion that is meant to come to the stage and last and become a doctrine for life, a way of life, a style of life for people. Now, if we go beyond the fundamentals, then I think why Islam is true would vary according to which person is talking. So, for example, if somebody is already a Muslim who is a practicing Muslim, because there's a wide spectrum of people who call themselves Muslims, but if somebody who is a Muslim who is a practicing Muslim, who has Islam living in his heart and his body, and he is walking what he is talking and what he is feeling, So you would expect from a divine religion that has come down to guide humanity and to give humanity peace and happiness, to cause the effects of peace and happiness and tranquility to the person who practices it. You would expect that he would be consistent with himself and that he would lead a happy life. My experience with Islam is that it fulfills this in one's life. You would expect a divine religion to enhance somebody's relation with himself, to connect him with himself, and to enhance his religion with people who matter to him and to society and humanity at large, which I think Islam also fulfills quite well. On the collective, you would expect that if this is the effect of Islam on the individual, that it can also, it should also be able to elevate societies that adopt it to the extent that the mainstream of the society is not only Islam, but also practicing Islam. And
5 minutes remain.
Yeah, and historically, we can see that a nomadic, vicious people who had no place on the stage of world civilization, which represents the state of the Arabs at the time of the revelation, through Islam in a very short amount of time, in few years, became the moral standard of humanity, and actually converted the nations that they went to after having world dominance to a much higher moral standard than their existing standard before joining Islam. Which once again proves that what Islam implements at the individual level, when it goes to the aggregate or to the collective level, aggregates to something good. This is because Muslims will not only follow Islam in theory. Again, they have an example that has lived Islam and has lived the Quran that they follow, which is the Prophet. Now, finally, the miracle of Islam, or the pinnacle of Islam, is the Quran, and the foundation of Islam is also the Quran. I would say the Quran, since it is presented by Islam as its everlasting miracle, have some features that lend itself to support that Islam is a true religion. I would start from its linguistic structure, which, as again, I'm saying that you can see Islam as true from various perspectives depending on your condition. So if you're somebody who talks Arabic, you will definitely appreciate that. But you can also refer to history, because Arabs were so eloquent in language, and they were challenged by the Quran, and at the end of the day, they yielded to that challenge. The second thing is that the kind of experience that person will have when reading the Quran, whether the way it affects his soul and heart and mind, or even the way it sounds. Somebody who appreciates the Arabic language and appreciates not only the speech or the sound of the text, but also the deep meanings, whether on the intellectual or the emotional levels of the text, would appreciate that this text can only be divine text. A third category will be the predictions of the Quran. Whether the predictions of the Quran about its own self, for example, that it will be preserved and not changed, which can be easily checked, or a fact check will show that Muslims have just one Quran that they agree upon, with its different qira'at, but this is one Quran. Regardless which sect of Islam you are with, you would agree that this is the Quran. And other historical and various kinds of predictions that Islam and the Quran made and came out true. The fourth category would be the scientific signs or the scientific accuracies of the Quran, combined with the linguistic eloquence of the Quran, to the extent that those scientific signs and miracles can be understood by people at different times and be appreciated. The fifth thing would be the comprehensiveness of the book, which is what you expect for a book that is coming for guidance. So in politics, sociology, physiology, psychology, family relations, law, governance, international relations, etc. Number 6, the ability of the Quran to elevate complete societies, as I have said. And number 7, the strength and the courage that the Quran talks about itself from the very beginning of the Quran, saying that this is a book of no doubts, that you cannot find differences or contradictions in it, all together bring the Quran to a state of appreciation that cannot be attained by human text. I hope I have been brief and concise enough. It's a big topic, but I think it should be enough for an opening statement.
All righty. You finished with 9 minutes and 30 seconds. You had 30 seconds left to go. All right. Apostate Prophet, are you ready for your opening 10-minute statement?
I should be ready. Yes, I was muted. Sorry.
It's all good. When you begin, I'll start your time.
Okay. So thanks again, James, for hosting this. Thank you so much, Ahmed, Esra, Finding Truth, for being here, for offering this debate, and thanks everybody for viewing and listening. Now, the topic of the debate is whether Islam is true or not. Whether Islam is true or not can be measured on from different aspects on different levels. When we ask whether Islam is true, what we are asking is whether Islam's truth claims essentially, that the Quran is a book of a divine origin, that Allah is there, that Muhammad is his final prophet, and so on, whether these things are true or not. I argue that these things are definitely false. They are not true. We can never prove them true. They cannot be proven true, no matter how hard you try, I would say. We can tackle this from many different perspectives, from many different angles. Now, my opponent Ahmed Esra here presented several points based upon which he concludes that Islam is true, such as that Islam is a rational religion. I would argue that Islam is definitely not a rational religion. On the contrary, Islam does not encourage thinking and reason and rationality. Muslims often argue that it does, but it doesn't. What the Quran says, for example, is will you not reason, or the rational or the reasonable ones, the ones who think, but what it means there is basically Islam is true. This is right. Why do you not reason? If I tell you what I'm telling you is absolutely right, why don't you use your mind? I am not thereby encouraging using your mind. I'm not thereby encouraging rationality and reason. I am thereby saying that if you agree with me, then that means you're using your mind. So I'm basically reprimanding you for not agreeing with me, which I call not using your mind. For example, Quran chapter 2 verse 266 says, Allah makes this sign clear to you that you may ponder. Here it is, pondering is not encouraged. What is encouraged is that you recognize Allah's signs and ponder upon them. It says in chapter 3 verse 137, travel through the earth and see those who denied the truth. It doesn't tell you that you should think independently, but that you should be scared of those who denied your words. In chapter 3 verse 191, it says, those who remember Allah and think on the creation of the heavens and the earth. So what it does is it tells you to think about what the Quran claims is true, not to think and arrive independently at reason. Thinking about a specific thing, encouraging people to think about this and come to this specific conclusion is not an encouragement of rationality and reason. It is an encouragement to agree with you and with nothing else. Of course, we also see in chapter 3, verse 192, for example, that the Quran explicitly says, indeed, whoever you admit to the fire, you have disgraced him, and for the wrongdoers there are no helpers. This comes incidentally directly after the Quran encourages that you agree with the Quran. So what the Quran does here is to say, use your head and agree with what I'm telling you. Otherwise, you will burn and suffer painfully. It says otherwise, if you obey most of the earth, you will come to assumptions and be false, and so on. I would definitely not say that the Quran is that Islam is a rational religion. Is Islam consistent with previous religions? I would say it is not. I asked Bart Ehrman, who is a very, very well-known, renowned Bible scholar and scholar in the New Testament and Jesus. It is even his opinion, ironic because Muslims often cite him. It is even his opinion that the Quran's account of Jesus is inconsistent. It makes no sense. It seems as though the Quran took different stories from Christianity and put them together where they do not belong, such as that Jesus could resurrect people or give life to inanimate beings, or that Jesus was born of a virgin, or that Jesus was not crucified because he could not be crucified. These things are ideas that do not align with Islam's account that Jesus was merely a messenger and not a higher being. It doesn't make any sense within the Islamic theology that Jesus didn't have a father. Not having a father in across cultures around the world, especially in the Greek cultures, was a feature of a divine origin, divine fatherhood, which is why Jesus didn't have a father. Islam adopts Jesus ignorantly, but provides a narrative for it which does not fit within its own theology. Islam has the Kaaba, a pagan polytheist building which has no place in Abrahamic religion. Islam has the sacrifice feast, the Hajj, the form in which Muslims pray, and so on. Many things which simply do not belong in the Abrahamic religion. In the Abrahamic religions, the idea is to pray, to worship God. In Islam, the idea is to worship the Quran and the Quran's God, and to recognize Muhammad as his assistant in order to be a true believer and avoid hell. Muslims are very openly, in Muhammad's words, discouraged from reading the Bible, for example, and
5 minutes remain.
when it comes to the great model Muhammad, we can talk about this endlessly. We do. I would definitely say that Muhammad is not a very insightful character. He made false prophecies, such as saying that the world would end within 100 years. It didn't happen. That judgment, that the hour would come when a boy in his presence is not very old, didn't happen. That Jerusalem would be conquered and Rome would be conquered, and then the Dajjal would come and this and that. These are events that either happened or can no longer happen. When it comes to self-fulfillment, I would argue that Islam is contrary to self-fulfillment. Islam teaches what Nietzsche would call a form of nihilism, which is that Islam directly teaches to hate the life that you have and to hate reality, to hate this world. And it makes you focus on the hereafter instead. To quote the Quran, it says in chapter 6, verse 32, and in chapter 29, verse 64, that this world's life is nothing but play, and it will all just go away. So what you have to do here is to not focus on the worldly things at all, but rather simply to worship Allah, because that is your only purpose in life, and you will die and go there, which is why fighting for Allah and dying, for example, are seen as extremely valuable things, more so than anything in life, because the worldly life is worthless. Worldly pleasures are worthless. They are discouraged, which is why in Islam, culture and entertainment is not very highly valued. It is, on the contrary, often condemned. And Islam has a focus on denying yourself pleasures, denying yourself happiness, and only looking for death and the hereafter. So is that a sense of self-fulfillment? I would disagree. And global statistics and reports of self-reported happiness would agree with that as well, because they rank the Islamic world very low in terms of human development and happiness, whereas the liberal West, for example, is rated very high. When it comes to the Quran miracles, linguistic miracles, in the words of scholars like Shadi Nasser, Marin van Putten, and others,
2 minutes left.
are incoherent because the Quran itself shaped the Arabic language which it took and created its own grammar. And you cannot say that the Quran's language is miraculous because you have nothing to measure it by. It is merely a unique book which has a poetic language, which is though not miraculous. And you cannot find the Quran in lists which list the most the most eloquent, the best text ever written. So I would definitely contest that. The Quran has not been properly preserved since the beginning. We cannot argue that. We cannot prove that because we never know how the Quran actually came into existence. All we know is that Muhammad apparently recited the Quran to his fellow people. Many people heard it, noted it, or memorized it, then brought it together and compiled it. And from a certain moment, then it was preserved. But that's all we know. We don't know whether we actually have the Quran which Muhammad recited or not. We cannot know that. In terms of science, I made a video in which I listed 60 scientific mistakes of the Quran. The Quran doesn't understand the sun. It says that the sun has a stopping point to which it travels, a resting place, to be very specific, that the moon and the sun follow each other, that Allah holds the sky and prevents it from falling down on us. The sky is not such a thing. In terms of consistency, the Quran says that if the Quran has only one contradiction, then it is false. It would have many contradictions within itself, and we can lengthily argue about that as well. I don't think Islam gives us any proper answers for life. Islam doesn't have any qualities that make it appear right. And Islam also tells us that Allah guides and misguides whom He wills, but gives us the mission to believe in Allah when it is in Allah's hands, whether we believe or not, according to the Quran itself. It is illogical. It is ignorant. I don't think Islam is true at all. Thank you.
And that is time. It's almost like you had that set behind you. Finding truth. If you are ready, you can go to your 10-minute rebuttal. Then AP will get a 10-minute rebuttal. And then we'll move into the 5 minutes of hot questions. Go ahead, Finding Truth, whenever you're ready.
All right. So AP here mentioned so many things. I don't think we'll have enough time to go through the whole of them. But let's try to address them as fast as he mentioned them. So the first thing he said that Islam cannot be proven to be true. I don't think he gave any reason for that. Anything can be proven to be true or not true, as far as the word proof means. So you would collect evidence and you would look at where the evidence takes you. And if the evidence takes you more to something being true, you consider it true. This is how you know if something is true or not. He said that it is not a rational religion. And then he actually quoted some verses. He quoted the translation of meaning of them. And while the verses are obviously asking Muslims to think, he says that it's asking them to think in a rhetorical way, just to command them to accept it. If they don't accept it, then it's essentially like warning them, which is not what the text says. So, for example, in the Quran, it says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Do they not ponder the Quran, or their hearts are locked? There is a multitude of ayat that says, for example, it says, قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانْظُرُوا كَيْفَ بَدَأَ الْخَلْقِ. Walk the earth and look how creation has started. It's actually asking you to do scientific research in the origins of life. سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق. We will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it is evident or obvious to them that it is the truth. So he will show you signs. He's asking you to think of those signs, whether in the horizons, be it the horizons of your knowledge or the horizons that you can access by your sight or by even scientific equipment. And within yourself. So look into the inner things of yourself. Look at the smallest thing you can find in yourself. Look at molecular biology, for example. It happens, for example, that I am having this series with Dr. Fazrana where we are pondering on the molecular biology level to see, and we many times we do some comparative analysis to what the Quran is saying, and sometimes even what the Bible is saying. Depends. He would quote things from the Bible, I quote things from the Quran. So the Quran does ask Muslims to think. And at the end of the day, as a rational person or person who would follow evidence, I'm an engineer and I'm a person that have learned science for the whole of my life. I would look at the manifestations of something. Engineering is about application. So if we look to the history of Muslims, Arabs who came out of Arabia, who had no civilizations whatsoever, have been encouraged actually by Islam to do scientific research, and they led the world, not only in terms of ruling the world, but they have created a huge and unprecedented scientific resurrection of the world after Europe was actually in the Dark Ages. Muslims were taken out of the scientific leadership of the world when their Islamic adherence went down. So there is an obvious correlation historically between Muslims being at the pinnacle of their adherence to Islam and Muslims also being at the pinnacle of their scientific advancement and civilization. He said, whether it is consistent with previous religions. Actually, I mentioned that in the fundamentals part. And in the fundamentals part, I talked about God's existence and about his being one God. And about him being the only divine being, and about humans being humans. And obviously, Islam differs with Christianity in that, and Islam is clear about differing with Christianity in that. However, if we are talking about Christianity of today, this is something. And if we are talking about Christianity that came with Jesus, something else. I did read the gospel, and there is nowhere in the gospel that I can see Jesus claiming that he is divine. So even if we could compare Islam to the scripture, there is no issue. He says Islam has a Kaaba, and this is not in the Abrahamic religion. Actually, the Kaaba was built by Prophet Abraham, and this is why it was venerated by his descendants, being the people who lived around the Kaaba, which was built by him and by Ismail. He said Muslims worship the Quran. No, Muslims do not worship the Quran. Muslims consider the Quran as God's word. And the Quran is divine because it is God's word. But we don't worship it. We execute and we live the Quran. We don't worship it. There is no meaning for saying something like that. The Quran is our tool to understand what God wants from us, and we perform what God wants from us. And this is what is the definition of worship. So following the Quran is the definition of worship according to the life of the Prophet Muhammad. Muslims are discouraged from reading other scriptures. This is false. In the beginning of during the life of Prophet Muhammad, when the Quran was still under the process of revelation, Muslims were discouraged to read other scriptures, not to mix between what he is bringing forward to them and what is other scriptures. So this was one of the mechanisms that Islam implemented to preserve what is exactly Quran, what is exactly not the Quran. Towards the end of the life of Prophet Muhammad, when Muslims already had very strong hold and memorization of the Quran, they were, for example, allowed to write down Sunnah, and they were allowed to convey things that were told to them by the Israelites, who actually happened to be their neighbors in Medina. So this is scientifically, historically false. Prophecies, I don't know that Prophet Muhammad has ever prophesied that the world ends in 100 years. This is false, and it's not true. And please quote, where did you get that from? A Sahih Hadith. That Jerusalem will be conquered, yes, the Prophet did prophesy that Jerusalem will be conquered, and it was conquered, actually. So what the Prophet in Hadith, that is Sahih, has prophesied, did happen. Some of what he prophesied, he said at the end of time. Obviously, time did not end yet. Whether Islam offers fulfillment, yes, it does offer fulfillment. It doesn't teach Muslims to hate life. The Quran encourages Muslims to live a full life within the boundaries of what is right. It also encourages people to be modest and to be ascetic in general, if they can, as a kind of self-purification, which is something that is even preached by Judaism and Christianity and Hinduism and other religions. So if you want to refine yourself and grab less to life, it's up to you. If you want to live a full life, it's up to you. Now, statistics about happiness in a world that is grabbing to materialism will have materialism as a measure for happiness, which is not the real measure of happiness. A person who can be poor can be happier than the richest person in the world. So depends on what are the measures of happiness that it is referring to. The eloquence of the Quran can be, that he mentioned, can actually be judged by the people who had the standard of the Arabic language, which was essentially, obviously, available before the Quran. Arabs were very strong poets. They had things called the mu'allaqat, which were the pinnacle of their eloquence. And they did yield to the eloquence of the Quran. Actually, contesting this is very strange. about the preservation of the Quran. There is a science called textual criticism. He did refer to Bart Ehrman, and I have Bart Ehrman on tape saying that he would have loved that Christianity has the kind of uniqueness of the Quran. And I think if he was following the news, there is something called the Birmingham Scrolls, or the Birmingham fragments. It's in the UK, and it has been carbon dated to be written text of the Quran that is actually probably within the life of Prophet Muhammad himself has been written down, or very close to that, and they match exactly what we have today, at least with Qira'at Hafs. Scientifically, this is a very big topic, but there isn't a single scientific contradiction in the Quran. I'm glad to have a separate debate for that, because we can actually spend our lives doing that. Then he finally closed that with Allah misguides people. There is nothing in the Quran that says Allah misguides people, but there is something in the Quran saying that He has given people free will, and those who choose to look the other way, He will make it easy for them to go the other way. Those who choose the right path, He will make it easy for them to follow the right path. Those who want to divert from truth, He will make it easy for them to divert from truth. He will just leave them to themselves. We are here to make choices. Islam supports personal choice, and then we are all accountable for our choices. This is the whole point behind Islam and religion in general. I'm done.
All righty. You made it this time with 20 seconds to spare.
Okay, so I have accumulated 50 seconds now. Do I get to use them as wild cards later?
Yeah, we can add the 20-second to the open discussion if you'd like.
And I have 30 seconds from the first one.
All right, so let's put AP in the big box. AP, whenever you're ready for your 10-minute rebuttal, go ahead.
I am ready and I'm going ahead. Thank you for that very much. Now, there are certain things that I want to address very specifically, other things that I want to gloss over and maybe get back to later. I agree with Ahmed. The whole debate on scientific mistakes is a very long debate that would take up our entire time today. So that is definitely something that should be left to a different time. Now, when it comes to the rationality part, I'm sorry, I simply cannot see how the Quran's verses can be with a correct understanding of critical thinking and rationality, how the Quran verses can be taken as an encouragement to apply rationality and reason and critical thinking. The critical thinking is something that is, that is the closest thing to what we call rationality. It is to think freely and to question your own thoughts, to be open-minded, not to hold on to specific dogma. The Quran, on the other hand, does not encourage that. The Quran encourages thinking and agreeing with what the Quran says or else. I'm sorry, that is not critical thinking. And we can give many examples to that. For example, I have them pulled up here. Now, the Quran says, for example, in chapter 7, verse 179, that Allah has created for hell many of the jinn and mankind. They have hearts with which they don't understand, eyes with which they do not see, ears with which they do not hear. They are like livestock. This doesn't look like an encouragement for everybody to think. It says many of these people, most of these people simply cannot think. They are like livestock. They were just made for hell. Quran chapter 8 verse 22 seemingly says that the worst of creatures are those who are deaf, dumb, and who do not use reason. But that's a very, very harsh encouragement to use your mind. And just 2 verses before that, it also says that you must obey Allah and never turn away from Him while you hear the message of Islam. In chapter 21, verse 67, it says, woe to you and what you worship other than Allah. Will you not use your mind? So if you worship something else, the Quran's direction here is, will you not use your mind? How dare you? Do you know what will happen to you? That is not an encouragement to use your mind. It's not of rationality. I'm sorry. You can as much as you want say, this is an encouragement to be rational. It is not. If I hold a gun to your head and say, hey, I care about you. Why do you not see this? Use your mind. That is not an encouragement to use your mind. It's an encouragement to obey me. And using your mind is, as said here, simply rhetorical. They do not do they not reflect upon the Quran, or are their hearts locked? This is again not an encouragement to think; it's an encouragement to agree with the Quran. In chapter 4, verse 56, it says that it threatens very explicitly and says, follow me here. Those who disbelieve, we will drive them into a fire. Every time their skins are roasted through, we will replace them with other skins, so they may taste the punishment. Indeed, Allah is the ever exalted in might and wise. So this is not an encouragement to think. This is a very brutal, graphic threat of what will happen to you if you do not think as the Quran tells you to think. So if you do not agree with the Quran. In chapter 24, verse 51, this is a very telling Quran verse, one that I love very much. It literally says, the only statement of the believers when they are called to Allah and His Messenger to judge between them is that they say, we hear and we obey. We hear and we obey. Those are the successful. Does it say that those who think are the successful? Does it say, just think for yourself and figure it out and you will be good? No, it says those who hear and obey are the successful. This is not a the mindset of advanced intellectual human beings. And finally, to give an example from Muhammad himself, Muhammad said in a certain quote, Sahih Bukhari 3276, Satan comes to some of you and says, who created this and who created that, until he asks who created Allah. When he comes to you, seek refuge with Allah and avoid such idle questions. So what he does here is not to say, hey, this is very simple, very logical, just do this and this, just figure it out, just follow this logic. No, he says, do not think, shut it down and seek refuge with Allah. So Islam simply, I'm sorry, it doesn't encourage thinking, it doesn't encourage critical thinking, it doesn't encourage reasoning, it encourages obedience. Islam is called submission for a reason. That's the literal translation of Islam. When it comes to the Kaaba, the Islamic claim is, of course, that Abraham built the Kaaba,
5
but that
minutes
is
remain.
entirely unfounded. Abraham leads back to everything that we know about Abraham comes from pre-Islamic Abrahamic scripture. In that scripture, the whole journey of Abraham takes place far in the north from Mecca and from where the Kaaba is. If we said that they somehow, for some very strange reason, corrupted Abraham's story, and therefore Abraham's journeys to the south, to Mecca, were never mentioned, then we should have to look at the Quran and ask the Quran for consistency. Islam and the Quran teach us that Abraham's stories with Isaac and Ishmael and all that are the true story of Abraham. But within that true story of Abraham, within his legacy, all we see is that Abraham wandered the regions around Jerusalem or throughout the Middle East and left a great legacy there with prophets and books that followed him. None of them has anything to do ever with Central or South Arabia, with what was in the past called Yemen, with Mecca and with the Kaaba. It simply has no connection to it. The Jews and the Christians knew nothing about the Kaaba until Islam arose from a polytheistic past. It simply does not fit into the Abrahamic religion. There is no mention within the Abrahamic religion of something called the Kaaba, and why should there be? It has no history, nothing in common with Abrahamic religion and with monotheism. When I said that Muslims worship the Quran, that was merely rhetorical. I'm not saying that Muslims learn that they are supposed to worship the Quran. I also say that Muslims almost worship Muhammad. By that, I don't mean that Muslims learn to worship Muhammad. I mean that Muhammad is placed next to Allah almost as a demigod, because you have to acknowledge him in order to be recognized as a Muslim and to avoid hellfire. Believing in one God alone is not enough within Islam. You have to acknowledge as well that Muhammad is the final messenger, otherwise you are wrong, which is why Jews are wrong, for example. Jews also believe in one God. So why are they not saved? Well, they do not accept the Quran and they do not accept Muhammad. And the Quran in chapter 9, verse 29, for example, instructs Muslims to fight the Jews and the Christians and those who disbelieve if they do not accept or adopt the religion of truth from the Muslims until they are subdued and pay protection money. In the next verse, it says that they are simply deluded disbelievers. So belief in one God is not enough. You also have to follow Muhammad and recognize him as God's assistant in order to go to heaven. Ahmed asked for a citation about where Muhammad said that the world will end within 100 years. Well, Muhammad said that no human will remain on the face of the earth within 100 years from now. And he said this in, I apparently made the notes in the English source of Sahih Bukhari when I noted them down. But in Sahih Bukhari 110, 539.
2 minutes remain.
And 575. In Sahih Muslim, book 31, hadith 6160, he said, nobody present on the surface of the earth tonight will be living after the completion of 100 years from this night. Now, some Muslims might say, oh, what he meant was not the end of the world. What he meant is that, the people alive right now will simply die within 100 years. Okay, but why in the world would he say that? What is so significant about that? There's nothing significant about saying that. His message there was clearly about the end of the world, which is why in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, these reports, these prophecies are listed together with prophecies about the end, about the last hour. Again, Sahih Muslim 41 hadith 7050 to 7053. People come to Muhammad and ask him, when will the hour come? And the hour, every single time in the hadith, refers to the day of judgment, to the last hour. He says, he keeps quiet for a while. He looks at a young boy in his presence, and he says, before this boy grows old, the hour will be established. That is literally what he says. Before this boy grows old, the hour will be established. In hadith language, it every single time means that the end will come. But for some reason, because the end didn't come, Muslims will often reinterpret this nowadays and say, well, he didn't mean the end of the times. So when it comes to linguistic inconsistency, as said, Shari Nasser himself, Marin van Putten and others who are scholars in the field say that the Quran is linguistically inconsistent and that it can't be measured by any yardstick.
And that is time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this, guys, brings to one of my favorite portions of the discussion. This is hot question time. I think I explained this to you guys beforehand, but let me sum it up for the audience. In this period, Finding Truth will go first. He'll have 5 minutes to bombard AP with as many questions as he can. If he doesn't feel AP is answering a question or going in an appropriate direction, he can stop and redirect to another question. Then AP will get 5 minutes to do the same thing. And then we'll get into after that with the open back and forth dialogue. So Finding Truth, whenever you are ready, I'll set your timer and you can start smashing out these questions.
Sorry, can you repeat that? We're going to 5 minutes of fast questions on my side and then on his side, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll I'll answer this question first. So once again, when we're talking about critical thinking, if I tell you you need to think before you get drunk, otherwise you'll make an accident if you drink and drive. Okay, does that mean I'm not asking you to think or what? You're muted.
Sorry. No, that means you're asking me to think because you're telling me about something reasonable. Sure.
Good. So if the Quran says if you disobey the Quran, you will go to hell, and you need to think of the fundamentals of life, including that God exists and He has sent revelation, otherwise you will go to hell, for example. Mm-hmm. Why would you consider that not asking for people to think? He's just telling you to think and then mentioning the consequences. So mentioning the consequences and showing you that it's a grave consequence does not mean that I do not want you to think. It means
well, there are certain differences in it. There are certain differences in that. For example, when you tell me, think first before you drink, because otherwise you will have an accident, you are talking about an observable reality and merely asking me to think, right? When you, however, tell me to think because otherwise I will be punished by you because I have to believe in what you tell me, then you are not telling me about an observable reality. You are simply telling me to believe you or else. So those things are hardly comparable.
So let me tell you this. So now your objection now is not that the Quran is not asking you to think. Your objection is essentially that you do not believe what the Quran considers tells you is the grave consequence of not thinking. So
Sure.
let's make this segregation, that it is because you do not believe what the Quran or any other religion, because there is hell in other religions too, and other religions say if you don't believe, you go to hell. So Islam is not new on that.
Well,
So
I
let's make a
entirely
big
disagree.
difference.
I entirely disagree on the point to begin with, that Islam encourages you to think, because I cited many sources in which it says that you are simply supposed to obey when you hear the message.
Okay, that's another point. So let me go again here. So are you a person who obeys the law, or you are not, or you're breaking the law every now and then, right, left, and center?
I try to obey, yes, because we know
Okay, so
the
is obeying? Why do you obey the law?
Depends on why. When I agree with the law and when the consequences are severe, then I obey because I know that the law is reasonable and that otherwise I might get in big trouble. Sure.
So you acknowledge that you should obey law that is made by humans, but you do not acknowledge that you should obey a law that is made by God. Is this the issue, or is the problem that you do not accept that it's made by God?
Well,
So
there is a difference here, which is the state is an entity that is observable, that we have our hands in, and laws are made based on certain explanations and a consensus. So when it is then said, obey the law because of this, I know very well the consequences of not obeying the law. When Islam tells me, obey me or else I will roast you, I'm just left with that, just with obeying.
No, obey me or I will roast you is the first question that you were talking about, the punishment being not observable. But now Islam says you have being a Muslim. Okay, so like for example, saying the oath of being an American citizen, you make an oath that you will obey the American Constitution or respect it and follow. You're a good citizen. You follow the law. Okay, so it's like samana wa ata'na also. It's the same thing. If you don't accept the American law, you'd rather not say the American oath. So Islam is just saying the same thing. If you say you're a Muslim, you accept the Islamic law, and this is samana wa ata'na. It's natural in human systems. It's more natural in divine systems. Now, the next thing I would like to ask
there is something
is,
very different about the nature of that, though, because when we are in America, for example, America tells us obey the law, be a good citizen, but you know what? You have complete freedom to speak and to think, and offer changes within the society, which is why this is a free country and there is a republic and a democracy and so on. Within Islam, you are not told that you are free to think and to question and to speak. You are told obey or else, and abstain from thinking, abstain from speaking, because the consequences will be clear.
Except that is not true, because Islam accepts that Jews and Christians and Maggies and people who are like Hindus, etc., live under it, and they obviously do not accept Islam, and they have lived under Islam for hundreds and thousands of years.
Of course, under certain circumstances, such as paying protection money and being humiliated by the Muslims, they cannot practice their religion freely.
You live in the United States and you pay taxes. It's not considered
And
humiliation, actually.
that is time for the first set of 5-minute questions. Now, AP, it is your chance to be the aggressor.
I was actually not very aggressive, by the way. There's no need for being aggressive. I'm enjoying the discussion, and that's
no, you're good. It's just a way to play up the intensity of the 5-minute hot questions.
All right.
You make it a big deal, then people think it's a good part of the debate.
Okay, I'll be aggressive now.
All right, AP, whenever you're ready.
Go ahead.
All right, I want to ask you the following question. Now, you have told me repeatedly that it is in my hands whether I believe or disbelieve, and that I will simply pay the consequences of my actions, right?
Yeah.
Right. According to the Islamic belief and according to the Quran, Allah created me from the very beginning, right?
I'm sorry, I lost my headpiece.
No problem. Allah created me, right?
Yes,
and he fully designed me. He knew everything that I would do. He knew every choice that I would make, and he designed my my intellectual abilities, my nature, my surroundings. So everything that makes me, and everything that makes my choices, he created everything, right?
Yes, he did.
Okay, and according to the Quran, again, I can do nothing except by the permission and the will of Allah, right?
Yes.
Okay. If I now end up disbelieving in Allah with everything that He gave me, and I end up not believing in Allah, did I make that choice, or did Allah make that choice for me?
You did make this choice with His permission.
I made the choice with His permission. So, so you're saying I created something, I made something, I brought something into action, which He did not decide.
He permitted you to take this decision because He permitted free will in the first place.
Okay, so then that means I am doing something which Allah did not decide. So I did this independently from Allah.
You created something that obviously Allah decided because He decided to give you free will. Okay. Now, once He delegated this free will to you, you are doing what He decided, but now you are bearing the consequences of your own choices because it's your choice now.
So, but you're telling me that I'm doing something that He decided for me, because otherwise, if He didn't decide it, then I would have done something independently from His will, which He had no decision over, which is in contradiction with the fundamentals of Islam.
So what I'm saying is that He decided that you have free will. So whether you have chosen to be a believer, or you have chosen to be a disbeliever, or you choose to believe and then become an apostate, you have fulfilled His will of giving you free will.
Okay.
Now, if you expect God to give you free will and then force you to do other things, then you have negated free will in the first place. So you have to be consistent.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
So, but what we are saying here is that Allah gives me free will. He knows exactly what I will do with my free will in the end. And He decides also what I will do with my free will. Does He or does He not decide what I will do with my free will in the end?
Okay, this is a good question. So I can take like 30 seconds to explain this answer in a good way. Okay.
Sure. Go ahead.
So let's say you are now looking to the screen in front of you. Let's expect there is a screen in front of you, and you see Ridwan in the screen. Okay. And you see that you're wearing red. Is the screen making you wear red, or it is just showing that you are wearing red?
It's just showing. Yeah.
Okay. So the screen is not forcing you to wear red or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that the screen that is in front of you is showing you Ridwan in 100 days from now. Okay. And it's showing you that you're wearing green. All right. Is it forcing you to wear green? Or is it just showing you that you're going to be wearing green in 100 days?
It's just showing, but that's not really the answer to the question, because in the question, it is Allah Himself who decides my final action.
Okay, so the objective of the parable that I have given you is that you are mixing between two things. You are mixing between God's will and God's omniscience. Okay, so His will is that we have free will. Okay, but He also knows what we are going to do with free will. But so let's make a parable that His knowledge is like a mirror, except that it sees the future as good as it sees the present and the past. So the point that He sees that you are going to be an apostate has no bearing that it is your choice.
I understand, but that was not really the question. The question is the final choice that I will make within the free will that He supposedly gave me.
Absolutely.
That final choice, are you telling me that the final choice that I make in the end is entirely independent from His decision making? Is it entirely just my decision?
It is consistent with His decision to give you free will, which
okay,
includes...
but that's not the question. So the final decision, does Allah decide what I will do in the end, or
No, He does not. He does not decide what you will do in the end. He decides that He is giving you free will, and then He decides on a series of things, including what tests you are going to go through. But what answers
so that
you
means
do
I'm
to the
doing
test is something
something.
else.
So that means that I'm doing something completely independently from Him. That means that He has no choice over what I will do in the end.
He has a choice, and he has committed Himself to permit you to fulfill your own choice.
That means
so
I have the choice to do something that He does not want me to do, and He has no choice over it, because in the end,
all right, guys, that has been 5 minutes. I'll go ahead and set the timer for the 30-minute open discussion. Thank you guys very much.
Can I use my 20 or 30 seconds together to complete the answer to Ridwan? I'm not going to open something else.
Go ahead and answer it, and then we'll just add that time for you.
So again, so Ridwan, let's say that you have a little child, okay, and you want him to grow, and you want his personality to grow by experience, okay. So you tell him don't drink, and then you tell him definitely don't drink and drive, okay. And he, that he goes behind your back and he keeps drinking. So you commit yourself, and you tell him what? Guess what? You drink, you will be a nasty person, and you get drunk and you do nasty things. But because I tried to prevent you so many times before, I commit to you that if I see you drinking, even if I'm seeing you taking your car, I will not stop you. Okay, you commit yourself to that. And he drives his car and he runs his car into the first tree in the road. Okay, and he learns his lesson. So now you can ask the same questions that you have asked me now about God. Is he doing something that you like? Obviously, you told him not to drink, so you don't like him to drink. But you have also committed yourself to give him free will in the sense that you will not stop him if you see him doing that, because you don't want to spend your life and his life preventing him from doing bad things, because he needs to grow up. So let me tell you this to conclude. God wants this creature to exist in the universe that has free will, that is responsible for his action. He has other many creatures that are completely fulfilling his will and are completely and continuously worshipping. We're just not this creature. Okay, so this is my answer to your question.
Unfortunately, I don't think on multiple levels this is not comparable to the example at hand. Now, first off, one reason, which is actually beside the point of the original argument, one reason why this is not comparable is that in the example of a father and a son, I am merely allowing my son to exist in a world that is determined by factors that are completely outside my power. And I am giving him the permission to act freely within this world so he can learn. And because he has to face consequences which are, again, completely outside my power, I'm also bound by them. I cannot control what he does and what happens to him. This is not similar to Allah and the human. Allah himself sets the conditions, sets the abilities, sets everything that happens, sets the consequences. So he is completely in charge. If I was like Allah, I would intervene and prevent my son from doing severe damage to himself or to others. But again, this is although this is not comparable, this is not the point of the question. It would only be comparable if I, as a father, was fully in charge of everything that my son will do or not do, because that is what Allah does. Allah supposedly decides from the very beginning and designs all my abilities, everything that I am, and everything that I will do and not do. This means that despite giving me free will, supposedly, which is internally inconsistent, he must also decide what I will do in the end with my free will. Does it or does it not mean that?
It doesn't mean that. So I have specifically picked an example, okay, where your son is drinking and driving a car. And obviously, I mean that it is your car. So you see him drinking, you see him pick up the keys of the car because he's in your house. Obviously, he's under your control. You know that drinking while driving is a disaster, obviously, because he's drunk and he's going to drive, and you're letting him do it because it's futile. A few years later, he will be beyond 18. He will leave you. He'll go and live in his own apartment, and he will drink and become drunk and drive his car and kill somebody. So maybe running into the tree is better than killing somebody later when he has his own car and he can still do it. So actually, I have picked an example in which you have the ability to stop him, but you choose not. Now, our existence in this world is not everything. We are ancient creatures. We are just wearing this body for a short amount of time. And we are into this test ground. It's like a war game or a maneuver or, a little reality that will just determine our destiny for eternity. So God has given us the choice. He has given us the choice to be who we are, and we accepted that choice. And now we have to be accountable. So you want your child to grow up and you're giving him the choice, and now he has to be accountable. If he kills somebody, it's his problem.
Unfortunately, the analogy is, again, very flawed because so when I have a child and I give my child the freedoms to do things, taking also into consideration that my child will probably have an accident when I let him drive drunk, for example, then what is happening here is that I'm merely allowing my child to do something within risks that I'm aware of. But in the example of Allah, so I am not actually designing my child, deciding exactly how my child will function and deciding exactly what he will do. In the example of Allah, Allah designs the human, decides exactly how he will work and what he will do. He knows exactly what will happen. He knows exactly that this human will, on this day, disbelieve and then die as a disbeliever, and as a consequence of that, be punished forever. But then he goes ahead, makes the decision to approve of that plan, and puts everything into play. So the analogy is simply not comparable. In the analogy, in the example of Allah, it is Allah himself who decides that Ahmed, not you.
Another one.
let's say Thomas. That
Yeah.
Thomas will be somebody who is intellectually of these abilities, who will make these choices, who will grow up in such an environment, and who will eventually end up disbelieving in Islam and therefore be punished. It is Allah himself who makes all these decisions and who decides all of this. If you say it is not, then you are saying that this is all, that this is outside of Allah's will and design.
So guess what? When your child will drive the car and run into a tree, and later, after he is, beyond 18, or even at that incident, and he is taken at a court of law, he will say, "It's my father. He did not raise me well. It's the society. It's a very bad society, and I saw people who are drinking." So in the beginning, you will drink because you have free will, and you will drive because you have free will, and you chose to drink and get drunk. And at the end of the time, you will blame your father, and you will blame the society. But guess what? The court of law will not take your argument for it. So it is very unfortunate that humans cherish their free will, cherish their free speech, etc. But then at the end of the day, when the child stands in front of the court, he will go back and blame his father and his society. It's just unfair. The story told by the Quran is that God has offered free will to humanity. Humanity accepted free will. It means that you and me have accepted free will. So we have to live up to what we have accepted. This is the Islamic perspective. Now, accepting the Islamic perspective, accepting the existence of God, accepting Islam is his revelation is something. And accepting that the argument put forward by the Islam, that we are here, we have free will, as a choice, as an initial choice.
I would like to ask you a series of questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you said the child would, in front of the law, complain that it was not he who was responsible, but that it was me, it was my doing. I want to ask you a series of questions. In the example of the child, when I am the father, did I fully design and create my child or not?
No, but to the extent that your child has been raised up as a drunk, okay? I'm sorry, I don't mean you. I mean, because you have said, did I? So...
Sure.
This father,
but did I fully design him? But did I fully design and decide that child or not?
You did not fully design him, but as far as being a drunk is concerned, you did not raise him well enough so that he's not a drunk, and definitely that when he gets drunk, he doesn't drive.
Okay.
Yeah. And he will say it. He will definitely say it. Every child says it, and every criminal goes to the court of law.
I understand.
And his
what about Allah?
Please society.
What about Allah? Did Allah create and fully design Thomas or not?
Yes, of course he did, but he also part of his design is free will. So if
allegedly,
you say
yes.
yeah, of course. Do you? Let me ask you now this question: do you think that you have chosen to leave Islam by your free will or not?
Yeah, depending on how we define free will, of course, yes.
I mean, did you choose to leave Islam, or somebody pushed you?
I chose it. Yes.
Okay, good. So when you come to Judgment Day, given that you believe me that it exists, he will tell you this recording that we're doing now. You will find it coming up, and here you go. You chose it. Now bear the consequences. I told you, but you didn't listen.
Will Allah also judge me if He understands that I genuinely do not believe that Islam is true?
Okay, this is actually a good question. So if you genuinely believe that Islam is not true, there is a level of even jurists, even Islamic jurists say that if Islam is mispresented to somebody, so if let's say that somebody only listens,
but let's assume it's correctly presented. I know everything about Islam, but I simply do not believe that it's true.
Well, this is something that you will have to prove to God, not to me. So let's say that you are standing in front of God now, and he will tell you, why did you disbelieve? You will tell him, because so and so. Okay. It is one of the main events of Judgment Day that you will have to argue. You have to make your case. Now you will need to look, you have to do some introspection here inside yourself and see and assume that this day, God is real, this day is real, we're just here for a transient state, and you're going to stand in front of him and test yourself if you have a good argument or not. This is some exercise that you will have to do, and James has to do.
But the issue is this is a hypothetical. So the hypothetical here is, and I would say in my case it's true. But let's say it's not about me. This is a hypothetical. Let us say I am fully informed about Islam. I know everything about it. I know everything that it says. But with everything that I know, with everything that I heard of by the Quran's standards, even, I am fully convinced that Islam is of course not true. That it's of course nonsensical. Does that mean I am judged as a disbeliever who will go to hell?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So that means I am not judged because I reject Islam as it is, but I'm rather judged because I was not convinced that it is true.
Okay, so the basic thing here is the following. The basic thing here is a basic claim, or a basic premise, actually. The right word would be premise. That Islam would be doing, that Judaism would be doing, that Christianity would be doing, that God created us with the innate nature and our default and our fundamental intellect will lead us to accept his revelation. Okay? And the case that God will make, Islam says at least this. Islam says that you will not just be dragged and thrown in hell. This is not how it's depicted. It is depicted that he will that this argument that you will make, if the premise that you're coming from is true, that you have been very well informed of what Islam is saying, and you think that you will be able to make the argument that I actually used proper thinking methodology, and I arrived to the point that Islam is not true. The claim that Islam is actually, the counter claim that Islam is making is that this argument will fail and you will submit to losing this argument on Judgment Day. This is the claim that Islam is saying. So it's giving you, let's say it's giving you an insurance policy here. The insurance policy is, if you are the only one out of the 8 billion who live now who will make this argument and defeat God's argument, you will survive. But he is saying, he's making it clear to you that you will not. So this is the risk.
Here is the issue. I'm being very charitable here because the Quran standard is not even this. The Quran's standard is not that you must hear the message fully and truly know everything about Islam. No, you know it very well. The Quran's message is that those who know and reject their their eternal abode is the hellfire, and they will stay there forever. So if you hear about Islam, if you are informed about it and you reject it, then you are in hell. Now the argument that we have a guarantee that this is innate in our nature, that we know internally that Islam is true and that we can recognize it, I would say is an insufficient argument, because obviously it is not good enough. Obviously this nature that we have inside is not good enough. Now I can tell you that I know about Islam, I am informed about it fully, but I simply believe 100% that it is nonsensical, that it is false, that I'm not lying to you. I am fully convinced that Islam is false. That means that I am not convinced, that I'm ignorant, that I'm maybe stupid, I don't know. But obviously that nature inside is not helping me be wiser about Islam, which is why I'm making a wrong decision. And so do many others. This would mean that we are all judged as disbelievers who will be punished forever simply because we are not bright enough, I guess, because we are not convinced by Islam.
So let me quote, because if I'm making a claim that Islam or the Quran says something, I have to quote somewhere, right?
Sure.
So in Surah Al-Nahl, for example, the bees. So it says this in verse 111. It says, يَوْمَ تَأْتِي كُلُّ نَفْسٍ تُجَادِلُ عَنْ نَفْسِهَا وَتُوَفَّى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا عَمِلَتْ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. And I will be translating off my mind now. So it's talking about Judgment Day. Yawma is the day. So on the day where every nafs, every self, every person that is, will come arguing for itself. وَتُوَفَّى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا عَمِلَتْ. And every self will be given the even reward for what it did. وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. And they will not be misjudged or unfairly judged. So it's telling you, you will be given the opportunity to argue for yourself. You will be fully rewarded for what you have done, and you will not be misjudged. This is a promise that God is doing. So if you are really confident and you want to take the risk that you are going to be able to do the argument and defeat God himself's argument, I don't recommend it to you, really. If this is your Pascal wager, I would then tell you what the Quran says. It says it essentially tells you is that don't bet on it because you're going to lose, and this is going to be the unrecoverable loss.
Here's the issue. Now, you might want to, appeal to such a what's it called, a theodesis to get out of this problem. But for example, if you want to quote the Quran, I can quote Quran chapter 2, which directly starts with the idea that that the Quran is the absolute truth and there is no fault in it. And then it says, indeed, those who disbelieve, it is all the same for them whether you warn them or not. They will not believe. They will not believe. Allah has set a seal upon their hearts and upon their hearing, and over their vision is a veil. For them is a great punishment. So it doesn't say those, they know, but they reject. It says they will not believe. They have a seal upon their heart. They do not understand. It says further in other parts of the Quran, their hearts. Their hearts are one first. Their hearts are disapproving. They do not believe in Allah. They are arrogant. So what is the case here is that humans are simply not acknowledging faith. They are not convinced that Islam is true, that Allah is real, which is why they will be facing a great punishment in the hereafter. Now, you could say that there is a test, and you will make your argument on the Day of Judgment because Allah is not unjust. But that doesn't really mean anything, does it? And that would mean nobody will be judged, because on the Day of Judgment, everyone will be confronted with Allah and acknowledge that He is true.
Okay, so let me actually, I like it when you quote a specific ayah, so we can actually talk about the ayah. So you quoted the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, and it says this in Arabic. It says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Now, you have to read the ayah in the sense of what it says, not what you want it to say. So the ayah starts with إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Surely those who are kafirin, okay? And let's now look at what it starts with. It starts with that you have actually chosen to be a disbeliever. And yes, the word kafir actually is probably there is a relation between kafir and kafir in English, because this is exactly what it means. Kafir actually means a farmer, the very original use of the word. And it's actually used in this meaning in some other place in the Quran. يُعْجِبُ الزُّرَّاعَ لِيَغِيظَ بِهِمُ الْكُفَّارِ. And the relation with the word kafir with a farmer is that when you are sowing seeds, you cover them with mud so that they would germinate. Okay, so he's using the word kafir here. He's not using other words that also mean disbelief, because it means you know the truth and you have covered it. You have chosen to declare that you do not want this. And then he is consistent with the rest of the Quran. You have chosen this, you know the truth, and you're looking the other way. Exactly what I have said in my previous rebuttal to what you have said. God respects our free will. He has made a commitment to give us free will. He has also made a commitment that he will hold us accountable for what we did. So if you choose to be a kafir in the linguistic meaning of kafir, that you know the truth and you cover the truth. You know that God exists, you say that God does not exist. You know that he has sent a revelation, you say no, he didn't send a revelation. You know that this is his revelation and this is his law, and he says I don't like his law. Okay,
here's the issue. We're playing semantics here and basically applying an eisegesis into what the Quran actually says. When the Quran uses the word kafir or kafaru, it tells us about disbelief, which is translated or basically explained as concealing the truth or hiding the truth or rejecting the truth. But here is the thing: when you say that this only refers to people who certainly know that Islam is true, but they still reject it, that is first off in contradiction with the Quran itself, because the Quran tells you its signs over and over again and says, why will you not believe? And uses the same word. It says they disbelieve despite us showing them our signs. And the Islamic scholars in history, I mean, this is agreed upon in the most famous books of Aqidah. What this is that people are shown Islam and they still deny it. It is not that they know Islam is true, but they deny it. It is that they are shown Islam and they deny it. So they reject it. That is what the agreed upon definition of this is. The idea that this only refers to people who certainly know that Islam is true, but they reject it is an unorthodox idea that I think is unfounded and in contradiction with the Quran itself.
Okay, okay, let me just summarize the thing. So the main point that I'm making is actually a threefold point. The first point is that the ayah starts by your position, not by the position of Allah. So it doesn't say, Ridwan is there, I will seal his heart and I will not let him speak. It starts by saying, Ridwan is an apostate, hence I will do so and so. Of course, this is not what the ayah is saying. I'm saying it's talking about people who have self-identified to start with as Inna Ladina Kafaru. This is what it starts with. But now, if you are looking at the general message of Islam, so I am now talking to X of whoever that person is. And then you will find the very straight and clear command that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to Prophet Muhammad. Ya ayyuha nabiyyu, ya ayyuha rasulu, balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik, wa illam taf'al fama ballaghta risalatahu. O Prophet, or O Messenger, convey what has been brought down to you from your Lord, and if you don't, then you have not conveyed his message. And this is Surah Al-Ma'idah, and it's ayah number 67. So the position of Islam is that the Prophet, and hence his followers to the end of time, they have to convey the message. Now, in Surah Al-Baqarah, it classifies people into three categories. People who choose to follow the message, which it talks about in the first 5 ayat, and people who choose to conceal, you have used the right word, okay, conceal or deny, which it talks about in 2 further ayat, and people who choose to pretend, munafiqun. They say we are mu'min, we say they are Muslim, but in their heart they are not. And these are the worst of the 3. So essentially, it also mentions the consequence of each of them. So the first one, they are successful. It ends and وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. The second, okay, this is what you have chosen, and you are concealing the truth. You know it, but you don't like it. So I will make it easy for you, okay? And in other ayat, it even says, I will leave you to the devil, okay?
Okay, can I ask a question? Those who don't believe in Islam, which category are they in? Those who reject Islam, those who say, I don't believe in this. This is nonsensical. Which category are they in?
They will know for themselves. So if somebody is still in the point of doubt, he wants to find the truth.
I'm not in doubt. I know that Islam is false. I say, hey, I'm fully convinced that Islam is false. It's nonsense. It's garbage. I don't know how you want me to tell it, but I mean, I'm fully convinced that it is false. Which category would I be in?
In the second one.
So that means that I am not convinced that Islam is true. That means I am a kafir. And for being a kafir and for not believing in Allah, I will go to hell and be punished forever. So obviously, I am being judged and punished because I was not good enough, I guess, to be convinced that Islam is the truth. I'm sorry, there is no way out of this. It means that I'm being judged for not being smart enough, I guess.
Yeah, so the point that specific ayah that you've mentioned is that a position of kufr. I didn't call you apostate prophet. You call yourself that. I don't agree to it.
But it doesn't matter. I'm judged for not believing. Right?
I mean, you're in the second category in the sense of you don't believe and you're clear that you don't believe.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it describes the kafirs that were living with the Prophet Muhammad, and they would say this Quran is like asatir al-awwalin. This is like stories of the old. Okay, it's we don't accept it, etc. So you're saying the same thing. So the position of Islam here is that if you have reached the position of complete denial in this way, given that you have heard it, okay, the position of Islam is you don't really not believe, you're just concealing. Now, it says that since everybody is held accountable for his choice, that you will be given the opportunity to stand in defense of yourself and you will fail. This is you have to take the claim
I'm sorry,
all
but
together.
that simply doesn't solve the problem. So what you have here, let me summarize where I stand now after all of this. So combined with everything that we talked about before, so Allah creates me. He fully designs me. He fully designs all my capabilities and faculties and my nature and my environment and so on and whatever it is. He says, you know what? I'm going to give this guy free will, and he can then choose whether, with everything that I have given him, he believes or disbelieves in me and my existence. I then go ahead with everything that he has given me and look into Islam, and I come to the conclusion, you know what, Islam is nonsense. It's nonsensical. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work. And therefore, Allah will then punish me for that conclusion. But from the very beginning, he also knew this is what I would do. So he created me with my capabilities and my free will. He knew exactly that in the end, I would use everything that he gave me and would come to the wrong conclusion that Islam is false. But he created and designed this. And as a result of my failure, of my mistake, he will punish me as a disbeliever in eternal hellfire. I'm sorry. This is not logically coherent. And this is not consistent with the idea that it is up to me and that Allah is somehow just within our understanding of justice, or even with the Islamic understanding of justice.
So the story that you have said is only partially true, which makes it false. Why? Because you're essentially missing three pieces, okay, that I have said. But since you have wrapped it all up, let me wrap it up. So what Islam says is that it doesn't start from this point. It starts from the point of us where we have not arrived to this world yet. So now picture Ridwan and Ahmad and James standing before God sometime before the creation of Ahmad and Ridwan and James in their human form, okay? And he is giving you the choice. I'm going to give you free will. You know I'm God, and you know I created you. Do you want to take this choice or not? Okay. And the consequences of taking this choice is that you will be held accountable. And I am arrogant, and you are arrogant, and James is arrogant. Why? Because we take the challenge. We think we're so smart. We're going to be humans. We're going to be having brains. He shows you what you're going to have. You're going to have a brain. You're going to have the ability to do rational thinking. And you say, yes, I want to take this choice. And then he says, okay, now bear witness that I am your Lord, and you bear witness. And then he tells you, bear witness that you are not going to say, I'm going to blame it on my parents. Bear witness, I'm not going to blame it on people who came before me that were a bad example for me, etc. This is exactly what the Quran says. I can actually tell you the ayah. Okay, with أخذ ربك من بني آدم من ظهورهم ذريتهم وأشهدهم على أنفسهم ألست بربكم قالوا بلى شهدنا. Okay, and what the translation of meaning is, and remember when your Lord has taken from the children of Adam, from their backs, their offsprings, and he made him to bear witness over themselves. Am I not your Lord? They said, yes, we bear witness. And then God commands, أن تقولوا إنما أشرك أن تقولوا إنا كنا عن هذا غافلين. I'm telling you this so that you will not later say, we have not been aware of this. أو تقولوا إنما أشرك آباؤنا وكنا ذرية من بعدهم أفتهلكنا بما فعل المبطلون. Or you would even, or you would alternatively say, our parents have taken partners to you, and we have been offsprings to them. So don't blame us for what those who have been bad wrongdoers did. So this is the first
I understand your scenario.
Okay.
The issue is that you are simply turning it around and inserting things which avoid the actual question. Because it is not wrong that Allah in the beginning creates me with my abilities, with my capabilities, with all my nature, my entire lifeline, my environment, and everything that I'm capable of. Now, even if long before creation I say, oh, you know what, I am going to take this challenge and I'm going to win, but in the end I fail. Even this, Allah knew from the very beginning before he created me, and he went ahead with this plan. He did not just approve of it, he actually designed that. So if I now take on a challenge which I cannot bear, then it is because of Allah's creation. and decree that I
Good.
did not do that.
Good.
If I
Good point.
fail in the end, it is Allah's creation and decree that I fail. If I am punished for that, that is also Allah's creation and decree. It's His work.
So that's why I said you're missing three pieces. So this is the first piece, that you have been aware, and actually every
And just one short point of moderation. You guys have 5 more minutes, so
great.
if
All
there's
right.
any other topic you want to mix it up back and forth on before closing, you guys can do that now. Also, for questions, please start putting in your questions after when we get the closing statements, because I'm seeing questions, but StreamYard will only let me go back so far.
Okay.
Also, closing for questions does not have to be in the form of a super chat, but tag my name and it'll highlight it for me. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so just I think it's we've dwelled enough on this point. We should really wrap it well. So I'm saying you have forsaken three pieces. So the first piece is this first scene, and then you started from God designed me in full. So I also refer to now I'm telling the Islamic scenario now. Whether when you accept the Islam, you accept the whole scenario. This is the whole thing, and then you judge whether the whole scenario is fair or not. And then so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, is talking about the creation of the human being and fully designing him, he describes it. He says, Alam naj'al lahu aynayn wa lisanan wa shafatayn, etc. And then he said, وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْن. So haven't we made for him 2 eyes and a tongue and 2 lips, etc., etc. And then he says, وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْن. And we have shown him and we have guided him to the 2 paths, not to 1 path. So he says, Ridwan, that it's part of your design that he has not only given you the choice, but he has shown you the path to accept his message and the path to reject his message. And you have taken a choice. You've just declared it yourself. I have taken a choice and I have understood Islam. I've lived Islam. I've taken a choice. And again, he has given you the tools, but you cannot forsake, you cannot overlook that part of these tools is showing you the 2 paths. And then the third scene is you lead your life, you take your choices, we're all gonna die. And that at the end, it is very clear from the detailed scenes of Judgment Day that you will have a fair chance to make your case. Okay, this is a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you will be given a fair chance to make your case. And now it is a matter of personal, individual introspection, that every one of us looks inside himself. Did I really say no to Islam or to Christianity at the time of Jesus, or to Judaism, or to whatever revelation has reached me, because I was really not convinced, or because I didn't want to be convinced, or that I was convinced but I actually rejected it? I don't want to live under the constraints of this religion. Okay. This is the whole story.
Okay, let me get to it. Now, here's the issue. I'm sorry to say this, but you are simply pushing the inevitable conclusion of it simply further away by inserting things that do not actually solve the problem. Now, your first insertion was that we actually agreed to a challenge before we were created. The second thing is that Allah gave us capabilities and eyes and this and that, and he showed us the path, but we simply choose the wrong path. The third one is that we will be subjected to fairness on the day of judgment. So therefore, the inevitable end will not be unfair; it will be fair. The issue is none of these things matter.
Just one point is that these are not issues that I'm making up. I'm just quoting the Quran directly.
I know. I am already taking these into consideration. The issue is these 3 things do not solve the problem at all. They are merely pushing the inevitable further away, but the inevitable comes again. Even if I accepted a challenge from the very beginning, whether I fail the challenge or not is a result of my capabilities and so on, and I'm simply being ignorant. Whether my capabilities were given to me or not, apparently they didn't help me enough. The guidance apparently didn't help me enough. I still make a mistake in the end and come to the wrong conclusion caused by Allah in the very beginning. And the fairness, whether that exists or not, fairness is very vague. In the end, whether it is fair or not, in the end, I will still have made a mistake and maybe a wrong judgment, and have still, come to the end as a result of my wrong choices. And the inevitable end here is then right there. With these three barriers out of the way, the inevitable end is Allah created me from the very beginning with my capabilities and designed me fully, knew exactly what I would do and where I would go. He is the complete designer and programmer of my capabilities. And with everything that he has given me, I made the stupid mistake in the end to come to the wrong conclusion because I was apparently not bright enough, despite the fact that this is what Allah gave me. And then I go to hell forever. I'm sorry. First off, it is Allah's doing and his design and decree. Secondly, Allah decrees and decides everything. It is his decision. Thirdly, I am simply being judged for not being good enough, for being stupid, for making a mistake. This simply doesn't work.
Okay, so just to
And this is time, so I'll give Fighting
Okay.
Truth just a chance to give like a 10-second
close.
response, and then
So
after that, we'll go into your closing statement as well.
Yeah. So the what he does in the beginning is not just a challenge; it's a choice. He's giving you a choice. What you do during your life is not that what he judges you is not for making a mistake. It is just a consequence of your choice. And his promise is he will be just. Now, just cannot be subjective if you believe in God, because if you believe in God in the way that Islam preaches, you believe that he is absolute justice. So now, again, you have to either accept the whole package altogether or reject the whole package altogether. We cannot just take bits and pieces. And what the whole package says, you accept choice, you take your choice, you're accountable for your choice. And it seems like fair to me. So if you'd like to go to the closing statements.
All right.
I think it was fun, actually. So
it was a good, fun, spirited back and forth.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
yeah, same here.
Okay, so Finding Truth, you'll have 5 minutes. Now is the time, guys, to tag your questions for the two debaters. Please tag James is Tired in the chat, and I will start pulling those things and getting them together. Finding Truth whenever you're ready.
Yeah. So if I look inside myself and think, if I am now to make the case in front of the world on Judgment Day why I chose Islam, I would say this. Islam came at a time where the whole world was plunging in darkness, injustice, wars, bloodshed, killing everywhere. If a nation wins over another nation, it totally destroys it. It demolishes into pieces. It razes cities to the ground. People were not safe. Romans and Persians, both great ancient civilizations, wreaking havoc everywhere. It came to a nation that lived in oblivion, nowhere on the map of the world. Primarily illiterate nation, just good in language, good and eloquent people who have good time to contemplate in the desert, looking to the sky and saying poetry, but that kidnap each other and kill each other. This nation, after fighting the person who came to them and tell them, stop killing, stop stealing, stop raping, stop enslaving each other, have morals, be civilized, don't deal in usury, be good to your children, be good to your parents, etc. They fought him. He lived a life, he lived an ascetic life. He lived and he left this nation completely converted to the other way, a nation that was elevated to the highest level of civilization, that retaught the world civilization, that when it went to other nations that had ancient civilizations, they learned their old sciences. They took that those sciences to a completely new level after Europe was plunged in complete darkness since Theodosius. And the Dark Ages stopped with Islam. The scientific and the rejuvenation of the world started by Islam. Islam kept leading the world for hundreds of years until very lately. Every society lived under Islam happily. This can only be a religion that is coming from God, where an individual can live a happy life and the global society can live a happy life. People who were Muslims and enjoyed Islam and people who were not Muslims and enjoyed living under Islam, you can see the comparison of the same people who were non-Muslims and lived under other systems while Islam existed. When the Jews were, for example, persecuted all over the world, in Europe, they ran to the places of Islam. They had centers in Baghdad and in Iberia, in Spain, because that was ruled by Islam. This is a religion that has elevated humanity to its pinnacle, and Muslims have only become at the state they are today because they have forsaken, or they have been deceived into forsaking their religion. It's an unfortunate state of affairs, but I am 100% convinced that this is the religion for the individual and for the human society to achieve what humanity is.
All right, you have a minute and 30 left, unless you want to
Still?
yield your
Wow,
time.
okay, great. So let me use that one, because now we'll go into the questions and answers. So this is at the general level of what Islam is and what its impact on the human being and on the global scene was. There is no religion there is no religion today. There is no religion today that accepts the legacy of the divine revelation from Adam until Prophet Muhammad other than Islam. Islam accepts Jesus, accepts Moses, accepts all the prophets since Adam until Muhammad, peace be upon him. He venerates every one of them. It says that Prophet Solomon was not a magician. It says that Prophet David did not do all the bad things that some people say about him. It says that Prophet Lot did not do the bad things that others say about him. It says that it gives to the history of revelation its right place in history. It accepts the other, it refines the human nature, and it pushes a Muslim to live the life to the fullest,
And that's
within the rule of the divine law.
all right,
That's
AP, we've got you up. When you start, we'll kick 5 minutes off.
All right. Thanks again for this. It was, I think it was a very interesting debate. I personally really enjoyed it, and I would love to have further exchanges. Debates like these are always what I ask for. I'm really not a fan of the whole, personal attacks and drama and everything that goes on nowadays online. But yeah, so my conclusion in the end is, again, that I have no reason to believe that Islam is true. On the contrary, I have every reason to believe that Islam is false. One of the main points that were argued today is that by the logic of the Islamic theology and the Islamic scripture, it is Allah himself who fully designs me, who is responsible for every action that I take, for everything that I do in the end. That includes everything that I will do in the end as a result of my free will. Allah decides what I will do. He knows what I will do. He creates me knowing what I will do, and He creates me for hell. The Quran itself explicitly says that Allah created many of the humans for hell, and that we have hearts with which we do not understand, and so on. So by Islam's logic, people like me were created for hell. And by people like me, let me talk about myself. I do not believe in Islam. I was a very firm believer. I was fully convinced and extremely emotional and in love with my Islamic faith in the past. And I prayed to Allah to never let me go, because this is the best thing ever. But after a while, I realized how my beliefs were built and based on inconsistencies and misinformation, and that I was following a life which simply is not how life is supposed to be lived. I came to the conclusion that it is false. Today, I am one of the most active critics of Islam, and I am only going to hell by Islam's logic because I am convinced that Islam is false. So because I came to a wrong conclusion, I am making some great stuff today and telling many people that Islam is false and telling people to stay away from Islam. So many people, I'm not praising myself, I'm just trying to get to a point. So many people are telling me that they left Islam because of me. Now, if I still have a chance at going to heaven because I just didn't know, and Allah will still forgive me on the day of judgment and will take me to heaven, then I have to say, who goes to hell? I just don't understand, because if I, in the eyes of many Muslims, one of the vilest people online, but according to their logic and their perspective, will not be punished with eternal hellfire, then who in the world will? Unfortunately, the Islamic logic is that those who do not believe in Islam, those who reject Islam, those who do not open their eyes and see the truth of Islam will be eternally punished with hellfire. They will go to hell. And it is Allah Himself who leads astray and guides whom He wills. Unfortunately, none of this makes any sense. It is Allah who is responsible. It is Allah who guides and misguides. It is Allah who doesn't allow me to believe. It is Allah who chooses to punish me for something that He Himself did and designed from the very beginning. Of course, outside of all of that, outside of the logical inconsistencies and the hell-heaven problem, we have many reasons not to believe in Islam, such as said, Muhammad made predictions about the future that have failed. The Quran is full of scientific mistakes and tells us nothing at all that is revolutionary for its time, nothing that helps us live a better life. Islam introduces morals that are unacceptable in terms of how we understand morality today. And even if we reject the whole concept of morality and simply go with what is best for our well-being and flourishing, Islam is not the answer. Islam introduces things such as hating and fighting each other, segregation, the suppression of women, the taking of captives and turning them into slaves and sex slaves, things that many Muslim apologists nowadays agree with, such as Daniel Hakikachu, for example. He's very well known for that stuff. Islam introduces morals that are not consistent with our human well-being. The Islamic scripture is not consistent with the Abrahamic religions and their understanding of God's mission for our life. Islam has no proper point, no basis to stand on from which it can argue that it brings us a message which we absolutely need in order to find fulfillment and to find something great in the hereafter. I see no reason to believe in Islam, and I always say, stay away from Islam. It is not good for you. I think that's time. That was much quicker than I thought.
Yep, you had exactly 3 seconds left, so
Okay.
perfect on this timer, AP. Let me reset the screen, get you guys into the question and answer portion. Also, people have commented in the section. Yes, I look tired. Yes to the back channel messages about my camera going every which way. My foot is wrapped. I heard it this week. So I've got like my display just keeps moving with me as I adjust on the couch, but enough personal complaints there.
Well, your channel is James is Tired, so I don't think you have anything to complain about. People know that already.
It fits.
Yeah.
I just need to pull this pillow up right beside me and fill the whole thing.
Yeah.
All right. So the first question that I am seeing, and what we'll do is if it's directed at one of you, then we'll give the other one a chance to respond a little bit too. It says, finding truth. Why do you distort Islam? AP was created for hell, and thus that distorts Islam were also created for hell. Why do you choose the same path if you are a true believer?
I don't really understand the question, but it's giving me an opportunity to respond to what AP says, that if he's not going to go to hell, who goes to hell? Actually, nothing guarantees that you're going to go to hell, because you can change your mind tomorrow. So I don't know, and he doesn't know that he has been created to hell or not, for hell or not. We will make that choice. We will make that choice. So for example, the second best person who walked the earth from the disciples of Prophet Muhammad, Umar ibn Khattab, the story of his belief is that he was on his way to kill the Prophet himself. So if that doesn't go to hell, who goes to hell? Guess what? He became one of the best people of the disciples. So it's nothing is guaranteed. I don't know if I'm going to heaven. I don't know if AP is going to hell. Why? Because we're still breathing, and as long as we're still breathing, we do still have a choice. It's as simple as that. As simple as that.
Well, my response would be, it doesn't really matter if I have if I will somehow change my mind in the end or not. In the end, if I'm always speaking in hypotheticals in the situation, the way that I am right now, or the way that somebody else is in their state of complete denial of Islam's truth because they don't believe in it. It would be they would be going to hell, and they would simply be going to hell for ignorance. And yeah, the Quran clearly says Allah created many of the jinn and mankind for hell. They have hearts with which they do not understand. They have eyes with which they do not see, ears with which they do not hear. They are like livestock. Rather, they are more astray. So it is the Quran's own logic that Allah created many of us for hell, which is simply a very strange thing to propagate.
Alrighty. So the next question is, so Christians and Jews and Hindus, etc., also have no free will? Do they really, do they really believe that, or is it just apostates?
I'm not sure to whom the question is.
I'm kind of confused by the question. Maybe it's about when you guys were talking about earlier about choice, and that you indicated that AP stood before Allah and chose to take this.
The Quran says
that he would further explain his question if he's still with us or something, maybe.
The Quran says that those who believe that Jesus is God will basically go to hell and stay there forever. So it kind of makes it clear that if you have a belief that goes in such a direction, then you are doomed to hellfire. It really takes some more reading into it to interpret anything different out of that. And I think that is inconsistent again with the idea that it is you who chooses and that Allah is somehow just.
Okay, so I might actually I might actually comment on that. So so there is no specific place in the Quran that says Jews and Christians go to hell. There is no specific. If you try to quote an ayah, you will not find it.
I specifically said those who believe that Jesus is God, that Allah is the third of the three, or that Jesus is.
It says that
God.
it says that this is kufr, but it doesn't say they go to hell. So just for the accuracy of the quoting.
It does. I'm sorry, I need to pull that up now.
Yeah, try. You will not find it because I happen to memorize the Quran. But it says that it is kufr. Now, if you want to go to the specific context, for example, of what happens on Judgment Day to a Christian, for example. So it's actually narrated at the end of Surah Al-Ma'idah. And at the end of Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes this scene where a dialogue with Jesus will happen. And the dialogue goes like this. I'll just be explaining the meaning, because I know most of the audience don't understand Arabic anyway. But you can look it up. It's the last page of Surah Al-Ma'idah. And it says, and Allah asks Jesus, have you told people to take me and my mother as two gods, partners to Allah? And he says, I have only told them what you have instructed me to say, that you should worship Allah alone. And if I have said it, you have known it. And if you know what is in myself, and do not know what in yourself. And I have been witness over them until you have raised me to you. And after you have raised me to you, you have been witness over them. And then the comment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes at the end is not, okay, you guys who have believed that Jesus is Lord, you're going to hell. The stunning thing is that these verses end like this. قال الله هذا يوم ينفع الصادقين صدقهم. Okay. Allah said, this is the day where the truthful will benefit from their truthfulness.
Okay, here's the issue, Ahmed.
Yeah.
You asked me to quote it. It is chapter 5, verse 72. So Maida 72. It says, they have certainly disbelieved who say Allah is the Messiah, the son of Mary, while the Messiah has said, O children of Israel, worship Allah, my Lord and your Lord. And it then says, indeed, those who associate Allah with others. The context is very clear. Allah has forbidden him paradise, and his refuge is the fire, and there are no helpers for the wrongdoers. So
Yeah,
the context within the context is very clear that those who believe Allah is the Messiah will go to hellfire, and paradise is forbidden for them. So what's wrong with my quoting?
I'll come to comment on that too, but maybe we don't want to.
Then,
yeah, go ahead.
There'll be more questions kind of on that, I think, going. So you guys will have a chance, but I'm trying to keep it as much where one comments than another responds as best I can. The next question for Hamid: how can you explain the verses and pandemics from the Islamic perspective? Or viruses. There's my dyslexia coming in. And pandemics from the Islamic perspective, when several hadiths say that infections don't exist.
Yeah. So the explanation is simple. God has created a universe in which people are tested. It is an imperfect universe by design, and that's why in Islam, in Arabic, it's called dunya, and dunya means inferior. So we have dunya, which is this world. The word dunya means the inferior world, and akhirah, the hereafter, is the perfect world, obviously. If you go to the right place, which is paradise, of course. Of course, if you go to hell, it's even worse. And an essential attribute of this world is that you die. And one of the reasons that you die is that you catch a disease. And one of the ways that you catch a disease is that you get a parasite, a bacterium, a virus, etc. Some people dying from an earthquake or a tsunami or a volcano can be compared for some people dying with a pandemic. There are so many different ways to die. Eventually, the promise of Islam or the promise of Allah is that people will die on their prescribed time. So there will be a pandemic, somebody will live, and I will die. Yeah, that's it.
I think the question was in reference to a series of hadith in which Muhammad says that there is no infection, there is no infectious disease. So and the meaning of it is agreed upon, such as in Sahih Bukhari 5717. It says that Muhammad said that there is no adwa, there are no infections, and in the audience, a Bedouin stands up and says, then what about my camels? When I bring a sick camel and a healthy camel together, then they all get infected with the disease. And Muhammad then says, well, then who conveyed the first disease to the first one? So according to Muhammad's logic, diseases do not exist. Infectious diseases are a superstition, like ghouls and other things. And yeah, that's that's the problem here.
Okay, so that's thank you for pointing it out. So the hadith that you have read from, do you want me to continue the explanation, or you want to go to the next question?
If we can, just if it's addressed to you, then I'm giving you a chance to open up, and then AP a chance to go back. But if we get any questions tagged to AP, then AP will get to make a statement. Then you'll get to respond to that too.
Sure.
Let me go.
So if she was referencing that hadith, the hadith actually says لا طيرة ولا عدوى. لا طيرة ولا عدوى. And then it says وفر من المجذوم كفرارك من الأسد. So you cannot just take a piece of a hadith and make a commentary. If you will take the hadith on its whole, or you will not take it at all. لا طيرة, it means you should not be pessimistic. ولا عدوى, it means no infection. وفر من المجذوم كفرارك من الأسد, and run away from a person who is plagued like you run away from a lion. So obviously لا عدوى refers to لا طيرة. So do not be pessimistic. If somebody is sick, do not treat him as rubbish.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give.
If he is sick, the extent that you know that this disease
Hamid,
is infectious.
I'm going to give AP a quick 10 seconds to respond to that, because I'm trying to do where it's only two responses, one response from you and one response from him for questions. That way we don't add like another mini debate at the end and then keep you guys here for the next 3 hours.
Unfortunately, the prominent version of the hadith is actually that Muhammad simply says that there is no disease. The version in which he says "and run away from the plague," as if it was a plague, is, according to the hadith, an addition that was not known at the very beginning. So the prominent hadith is simply that it doesn't exist. That's it.
Alrighty, next question. What does Islam exclusively offer besides supposed principles we are already aware of? Why add Allah to the mix? How do we know these are direct miracles from Islam? So I believe that is to you, Hamid.
What does Islam exclusively offer besides supposed principles we are already aware of? Why add Allah to the mix? How do we know these are direct miracles from Islam? What does Islam exclusively offer? It offers an uncorrupted, unchanged set of instructions for conducting your life that you can directly, if you accept Islam, that is, that you can directly attribute to a prophet, and it has been preserved from his time until today. Should that fundamentally differ, for example, from Christianity in terms of its fundamental principles of moral code, or from Judaism? The basic principles of morality in the major religions that can be attributed to divine revelation should be the same, because they're all coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you will find in Islam quite detailed jurisprudence that will give you the opportunity not just to live with general principles, but also to live with a complete, not only with general principles and a specific lifestyle, but with a very detailed prescriptive system that will address almost every aspect of your life. This is the difference that Islam offers. Of course, it also offers you that you will be following the latest version. You would like to have your iPhone with the latest iOS on it because it has less bugs or something, or it will have better features. So if you accept that Islam is a religion from God, you'd better follow it because it's the latest and the final one. This is what Islam offers you. Yeah. Why add Allah to the mix? Allah is there in every religion. So on the cross, Jesus is narrated to have said, "Eloi, Eloi, lima sabachthani." So he's calling on Allah. Christians who are speaking Arabic call God Allah, by the way. God the Father, they call him Allah. So Allah is there in the mix everywhere. There is no religion without Allah.
My response to that would be that you can use the same logic for all the other religions which came into existence after Islam, including the Ahmadiyya religion, the Baha'i faith, the Mormonism, and so on. Other than that, I have really nothing to add to the question here.
You're muted, James.
Sorry, I saw a question for AP. I'm trying to get that back up. I don't know if you guys ever have issues with StreamYard, but this is being very difficult today.
Yeah.
Sometimes it will overflow when there is too many comments. So what you'd better do is to have YouTube in front of you and scroll directly on the live chat if it's missing some stuff. Sometimes it happens to me, actually.
Oh, okay. It looks like they deleted the message. That's why it is gone. Let me see. All right, so I got a question in my back channel. It was, it's actually for AP, so that is a good thing. We got the first one, I think, officially for you.
I still get to comment.
You get to comment after that, yes.
Yeah.
So it is, can you please ask AP what it would take to convince him that Islam is true?
That's a question that would require a very broad or vague answer. But I mean, obviously, I would need to see proof that Islam's truth claims are indeed true, that they correspond with what we know to be true. That's what I can say in general. It's a very vague response. But if we can, for example, if a logical explanation can be provided for the problems of the contradiction between free will and predetermination and creation of Allah could be provided, that could solve the problem. Unfortunately, I don't think that's possible. If Muhammad's prophecies were entirely accurate, that would be good. If the Quran was free from scientific mistakes, I would consider Islam again. There are simply too many aspects. That's it.
Finding truth.
Yeah, the problem is that all what you have mentioned is already available in Islam, except that we don't have 20 hours. But I will be glad to entertain every one of them.
All
Yeah, so
right.
Islam does have scientific signs that are otherwise unknowable to the Prophet. It does every prophecy that the Prophet has made that has a specific time in a Sahih Hadith has come to fruition, and Islam's there's the matter of free will versus predeterminism is a conceptual philosophical issue that is not an issue with Islam. But if you stop at that point, you will have to reject free will itself, or reject every religion, or reject the ethical or the morality of Judgment Day altogether, actually, because so it's not an issue with Islam alone.
All right. So this will be the second to last question. Then we're going to plug our debaters' channels and then get ready to roll the credits. So the next question that I ask after that, whatever's the most creative, well thought out, masterful question will end the debate after this one. And I think it's going to Apostate Prophet. Apostate Prophet have free will. If he has no free will, tell him to bring a proof. Why does he advocate for freedom of choice? Isn't that a contradiction?
Okay. Now there are different ways that I could respond to this, but I don't think the questioner understands my position. I'm not claiming here that free will doesn't exist or that I have no free will. That is a completely different discussion that we could go into on the theory of free will and whether it exists or not. Very deep discussion. But my problem is not that I don't have free will. The problem here is that within the Islamic context, free will is inconsistent with its own with its own theology, with its own logic. So free will is within Islam logically inconsistent, and there are logical arguments, evidential arguments, and other arguments that can be presented against the idea that Islam does indeed combine free will and predestination in a good way. I don't think it does. Outside of that, whether I have free will or not, again, completely different question. I'm making no claim on that here.
Hamid, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think that anybody who pleads that I don't think that what Ridwan has said was that he doesn't have free will, because I asked him if he has chosen to be an apostle, and he said yes, it's my choice. So he doesn't reject that. What he says is that an omniscient God is inherently philosophically inconsistent with human free will. So this is actually a philosophical question. Every religion that holds humanity accountable for its actions obviously asserts free will, because if you don't have free will, you're not accountable. But also every religion that preaches a divine, not everyone, at least the major. Okay, let's speak about Islam and obviously preaches that God is also omniscient. So you would either accept a philosophical parable like the one that I have made for the mirror, for example, or you will have to, if you accept Islam as a religion from other evidence, okay, then you take God's word for it, that it is within his domain of capability to grant free will. Because the question now is, if God is omnipotent and omniscient, is it possible to have free will other than the free will of God? This is the philosophical question. It's not a question that relates to Islam. It's a philosophical question of divine and human nature. I think it is consistent, and we can argue about this.
And
it can be a complete discussion on its
the
own.
next question will actually allow this to continue
really?
for another.
I want to very quickly add to the question just a very small comment to
Go
answer
ahead.
the actual question of the commenter. The question there was, does Apostate Prophet have free will? I completely ignored that because I said that's not actually the point of the topic. But as far as I am concerned, as far as I have come in research and in understanding human nature and so on, I think that I do have free will practically. I'm not sure how much theoretically I have free will. I think my choices and actions in life are very much determined by my environment, the family that I was brought up in, my genetic, features and so on. So I think I am very much at the mercy of many factors that are completely outside my hands and my will. But nevertheless, within this, as I know myself, I have free will. Go ahead.
Sorry, my dog just started to bark at random, and I'm like, no, don't bark at the end of the debate. So before I ask this question, the person who back channeled me a question for the debaters, which was how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? That is beautiful and brilliant. You completely
it has nothing to do with free will, though. You said that the next one is free will related.
The next question I'll ask is that, but I figured I'd at least give that a shout out. I did that to myself when I said, put the most creative question you could think of. So the final question of the debate, how does that follow? If you don't have free will, you are not accountable for your actions.
Who is that question for? Is that?
I think it was right after Amid talked, so we'll give it to Amid, then you, then we'll plug channels and wrap this thing.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I happen to be an electronics and a communication engineer with a career in information systems. So let me give you this example. If I program a computer program to do something, and the programming was that it is a killing bot and it goes on and kills things, okay? You cannot then catch the bot and kill it in retribution, all right? Because it doesn't have a free will. If I create a robot that looks like, that is a humanoid, okay, and looks like humans and would smile when you tell it a joke, but at the end of the day, all what it's doing is that it is giving preset responses. And we have almost all of us, unless you've been living in a cave or something, we have lived those games where you are into this world or this universe and you are interacting with other AI creatures in the game, right? Maybe it's a dinosaur, maybe it's another computer AI artifact there, okay? And we know that those things are just a manifestation of the computer program. So if they do bad things, and if we are creatures of that world, you cannot hold those guys accountable for anything. You will have to hold the programmer accountable. So if we accept a God who doesn't give free will, then God is responsible for everything. This is how it follows.
My response to it would be I kind of stand where I was. I made a long presentation on this a while back. I called it Therefore Islam is False, or a philosophical refutation of Islam, or something along those lines. I don't know. But so the idea is that Islam, I think that free will cannot exist within the Islamic theology. In Islam, Allah creates the human, fully designs the human, determines everything that the human will do in his life, determines exactly how the human will function. And Allah knows from the very beginning that if Thomas is created with these capabilities and qualities and environment that Allah creates, then Thomas will in the end make the mistake and choose to disbelieve in Allah, and then will be punished as a result of that, on account of his disbelief. Allah not only creates Thomas with those abilities and with those capabilities and with his environment, which leads to Thomas's mistake, he also designs and programs Thomas's mistake and approves of the plan of Thomas making the mistake. And as a result of that mistake, Allah chooses to punish Thomas when the punishment is absolutely not needed. I mean, think about it. Why in the world is the punishment necessary to begin with? It is completely set up by Allah. So I don't think free will exists within Islam. And I don't think that a human can be held accountable within a consistent Islamic perspective if it were consistent. And that's where I will rest my case, I think.
All righty. I want to say thank you to both debaters. You'll find a link to Apostate Prophet's channel in the description. You'll find a link to Finding Truth. Finding Truth, do you have anything coming up you want to plug for the audience?
Yeah, so I'm now doing this series. I think it's a very nice one with Dr. Fazrana, who is a PhD biochemistry and Christian. And we ponder the magnificence of the genetic system and microbiology and molecular biology. He looks at it from the biochemistry aspect, and I look at it from the informatics and electronics and engineering aspect. And the point is, if this thing is at the pinnacle of human engineering and beyond, then somebody who is a really good designer did it, and it can only be the designer of life and the creator of the universe. So it's a very nice, it's a positive note rather than just fighting with evolutionists all the time. We'll just take in a positive note and pondering the magnificence of life's design. Another thing I'm going to be doing quite soon is another series with a Muslim scientist, this time, who is a physicist, actually, and we will be looking into how Islamic kalam, which is essentially the thought process of the early Islamic 2 centuries, that is driven from divine revelation, and how that very early scholars of Islam have actually reached to results that can only be understood under the context of quantum mechanics and general relativity of the very modern age, which is quite amazing. And I actually have a nice discussion with Hugh Ross this coming Saturday about how studying cosmology and astronomy leads to believing God. And Hugh Ross is obviously a Christian. So obviously, I don't have a problem with discussing things with people who are of other religions, as long as even with the apostates, as long as the discussion will lead us somewhere, and we can have a. I hope Ridwan, you have enjoyed this.
Absolutely.
And I hope you don't go to hell, man. I hope you don't go to hell, man. You know, the Prophet Muhammad used to say, used to pray for Umar ibn Khattab, who wanted to kill him. And I pray for you that you reconsider.
Ahmed, don't worry, I won't go to hell.
Then okay, to me that means that you will revert. So
So AP, what do you got going on? I see you've done some interesting stuff with Bart Ehrman and David Wood.
Yeah, I came together with Bart Ehrman several times. We kind of have this growing cooperation with him going on, which is very interesting. I had I had some contact with Bart Ehrman in the past, but I never went ahead actually engaging in a long discussion with him and having an interview with him. In the end, very honestly, I was suddenly driven to interview Bart Ehrman because he had just had an interview with a Muslim apologist, a very well-known one. And then after that, as a result of that, I kind of formed this kind of partnership with Bart Ehrman and learned that he is a very, very nice guy who loves to, present all his knowledge in fields that do not correspond with things that people usually ask him. So I will have more with him in the future. There are some more interviews that will come up very soon that I have arranged. I don't want to reveal them in advance, but there will be some very nice stuff coming very soon. Other than that, I'm not quite as interesting as Ahmed here, but I have to say I really loved this debate. I really enjoyed it, simply due to the fact that I think this was done in a very respectful way and in a very fruitful way. It was insightful and thought-provoking, and I truly appreciate this, and I would love to see more of this. I'm always happy to engage further. We can always have more debates on related topics. So thank you so much, Ahmed, and thank you so much, James, for this opportunity. And thanks, everyone, for viewing. And you can always find me on my channel, Apostate Prophet, right here on YouTube.
Yeah, I would have to say that also the debate has gone. So thank you, James, obviously, for bringing us both here. And I think this went much more peaceful than other debates that Ridwan had.
Yeah.
Most of my debates are in this same wavelength. So
Because of you. I have to say because of you. I have to say that. It went this way because of you.
I don't carry boxing gloves because if debate is about boxing gloves, it's not worth it. So it's about mutual understanding and trying to make a point. So if you would like to go through the other stuff, the Quran is scientific, prophecies, life of Prophet Muhammad, etc. I'm very happy to do that, and we can pick a platform or come to James or whatever you would like. And it's obviously that obviously James is a good moderator, but I think we'll go along easily.
All right, and once again, thank you to the viewers. Please consider liking and subscribing. If you don't like my content later, you can always unsubscribe, but you can't subscribe in the past, in the future.
It's a good one.
I don't know. You're not supposed to tell people to unsubscribe later, are you? That's not a good thing, is it?
It's like full refund, money back guarantee. But guess what? Nobody really does the refund because it's too hectic.
No, that's great. So I'll roll the outro. I'll chat with you guys just a few short minutes after, and thank you guys again.
Thank you so much.
I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint. Ride or die.